Rob?
Marcy, we are now live, so thank you for joining us. I want to apologize to everyone. We had a little IT issue that is now resolved, and we will now begin the program. I want to welcome everyone to today's program, which is brought to you by SpineMark. I'm Robert Kurtz, moderator for the webinar. The program will begin with a presentation, and then we'll have a question and answer session following completion of the presentation. You can submit any questions you have throughout the webinar by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter a Question for Staff and clicking Send. Our presenters will attempt to answer as many of your questions as they can during the Q&A portion of the program. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenters. Marcy Rogers is President and CEO of SpineMark, the premier global spine service company for the development of spine centers of excellence and spine research organizations. SpineMark works with physicians, hospitals, facility companies, third-party payers, and medical manufacturers in the fields of spine, pain, orthopedic surgery, and neurosurgery. We also have John Goehle, who is Chief Operating Officer of Ambulatory Healthcare Strategies, a provider of unique tiered administrative oversight and consulting model that is tailored to each of the company's clients based on their current and future needs. The AHS business model provides a variety of outsourced service offerings ranging from one-time consulting services to administrator mentoring all the way up to full-time management services. I'll now turn the floor over to Marcy to begin the presentation. Marcy?
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, everyone. I tell you, we can live and die by IT, won't we? It's a pleasure to have everybody join us today, and I'm excited to share some of our thoughts regarding alignment strategies using spine centers with everyone. Rob, I'll start with the first slide. And basically, this slide and what this is about is talking about some of the various models that are out there for developing an alignment strategy with physicians and hospital members to be able to develop some specific programs. And the gamut runs from a co-management agreement with physicians to gain sharing programs, in actual employment of physicians, and then the last category is actually ownership, creating a vehicle as a joint venture for ownership of all parties in the opportunity. But it starts with common goals and communication and the ability to align physicians and a facility partner with some key objectives. John, do you have anything to add with all your great experience on the physician side?
No, certainly. I think as we go through, we're going to talk about how physicians can be vested in the process, what we want to do to try to bring them into the process to avoid, letting them seek other opportunities that might not be in the best interest of the hospital.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Rob, next slide. This is for research. The next slide you're going to see on your screen talks about the integration of research and a strategy that includes hospitals, physicians, and industry. And we use the whole continuum of clinical research to also create an alignment strategy through the creation of a dedicated research organization with hospital and physician partners to participate in global clinical trials. So we have one structure that's an important structure for the clinical side and the Center of Excellence, which we'll talk about, and then we have another vehicle for the research side, which gives us a good continuum of bringing everyone together under one integrated model that has various components for delivery. Next slide, please, Rob. Meeting the physician's needs. I'm going to let John run with this.
Sure. One of the main strategies behind bringing alignment into your facility is to find mechanisms to bring physicians to meet the needs of the physicians. We know that doctors have a lot of other opportunities now. We know that they can choose different hospitals if there's other hospitals in the community. We know that they can actually leave your community and find another community. And we know that there's outpatient options. One of those things that I do an awful lot of work and I think where my expertise comes in here is often physicians come to a company like mine and say the local hospital is not meeting my needs, or they're not being helpful to me. So, I've chosen to go away from that and try to set up an outpatient option. So what we need to do is assess what are the physician's needs. We need to understand what's driving the physician's decision-making processes. What options can they find in an outpatient environment or in another inpatient environment? Hospitals tend to be much more bureaucratic, we know. And what we need to do is find a way to lessen the amount of bureaucracy that a physician has to deal with in order to achieve the goals that he's set. We want them to understand, to resolve conflicts, to not have conflicts with the hospital. And one of the ways that we do that is try to find creative and collaborative approaches to problem solving or developing new initiatives. Always seeking to find a win-win solution. I mean, in the past, in many years in the past, the hospital drove everything. But we know today that physicians are an integral part of the process, and we need to bring them into the decision-making matrix and work with them to find a solution that is going to work for the hospital, for the physician, and, of course, for the patients. And one of my favorite topics is avoiding complex solutions. I've worked with hospitals, over 30 years, and it seems like they love to set up committees for sometimes the most basic things, what I think are the most basic things. Have 20 meetings before they make a decision, et cetera. And this is frustrating for a physician. One of the main reasons that my ambulatory surgery centers are successful is because we try to eliminate that type of a committee-based decision-making model and get down to one-on-one conversations with them. So when you're working with the physicians, try to think in terms of one-on-one meetings, talking face-to-face with the doctor, sometimes or mostly on their own turf, as opposed to setting up a meeting where you force them to come to you and sit down and in front of a table and waste an hour or 2 hours of their time, or multiple meetings or committee meetings before a decision can be made.
Thank you, John. Rob, next slide. This is spine care management physician alignment. What we're talking about here, as John alluded to, is making sure that the hospital or facility partners and physician partners are aligned. The physician partners are an integral part of the success of these types of models because they're actually the driver of facility revenue and patients coming through the system. The benefits, as we see, for the hospital are obviously increased volumes, but also being able to brand identify themselves in their marketplace, becoming a market differentiator, if you will, or creating a new standard of care for what's going on for spine services. The vendor contract side and the shared cost responsibility is key. And I think, John, you can talk to some of the benefits here with on setting up the OR and the floors and the community at large. Would you like to comment here, please?
Yes, certainly. On the physician side, when you put together a spine care management program, fully aligning the physicians with it, helping them or bringing them into the process, making them part of the solution, making them part of the decision matrix, they feel that the benefits that come out of it would be a dedicated OR team, for example. They know that they're going to have the same team of nurses and techs for each of their surgeries, and that they're going to be able to train those people to do the types of things that they want to have done in order to make their efficiency. The big thing here is the term efficiency, trying to reduce the amount of time that the surgery takes, reduce the turnover time in the procedures, reduce the education time for new people being brought onto an OR team. Again, hoping that they have the same team. Dedicated spine floors so that doctor only has to go to one place in the hospital, be able to take care of his patients. I think the last two bullets are very critical also, making sure that we have standardized pre-admission education and support, that the patients know where to go to and who to talk to, both prior to and after the procedure. I don't think we actually mentioned the after benefits here too. And making sure the pre-admission testing is done consistently, that the message gets to the patient so that we reduce the number of cancellations as a result of the patient not knowing what needs to be done. On the community side, there's a lot of talk now about how we prove to the payers that the solutions that that a physician at a hospital is offering to the patient meets the needs of the payer and the needs of the patients, and it does it so in a cost-efficient manner. And this type of a model, especially when you hear Marcy go on to talk about the research side, helps to provide the community, the payers, and patients with feedback as to the success of the program. And of course, as we develop good clinical outcome monitoring mechanisms, good quality management programs, we'll get the data to be able to prove that sort of thing. And cost effectiveness, that's of course the big buzzword, has been for a long time, but even more so now with health reform. This type of a model helps to assure the community that the patient is being offered a solution along a continuum instead of just saying, okay, automatically we're going to go to surgery. That they know that there's that all of the aspects have been considered prior to actually going to the most major type of procedure that would be done.
Thank you, John. Next slide, Rob. OR supply cost alignment is one of the biggest issues that we traditionally hear about in the industry from both the hospital side as well as the surgeon. And so some of the models that have been developed, we've developed to address this, because very often we find that there's different motivations involved on the physician side, who's ideally looking for the optimal OR implant or biologic or some new technology for his patient. On the hospital side, they're looking to they want to fulfill their mission to the patient, but they've also got to manage costs. So we believe that one of the models that works very well is to create a physician hospital OR committee OR committee that would be comprised of surgeons, the hospital, and then OR representatives. Another important area is to build relationships with vendors, and also use research to explore new options for med-surg supplies in spine, which can tend to be very expensive. John, I think you have some good comments here because you've actually had to implement this in your facilities.
Correct. And what I find is sometimes the biggest impediment to physicians buying into this process is the fact that if they're not part of the process, or if they don't have a buy-in, like that last part of the continuum that Marcy mentioned in her first slide, where they're actually an owner of part of the process, they don't have an incentive to bring those costs down. In ambulatory surgery centers, for example, we find that surgeons, when they're actually paying for that implant that's going into the patient, they have a very different attitude toward what's going to be used, and they feel, you know, they're going to find the best thing for the patient, but if there's a less expensive option, they're definitely going to go for that if they are the one that's paying the bill. We laughingly talk about, okay, well, I want to do this procedure, I want to do this implant, I think I'm just going to take it over to the hospital where they'll pay for everything. Well, of course, that isn't in the hospital's best interest. So bringing them into the process, even helping them to understand the cost of the implant or the other supplies, it's not always implants themselves that are part of the extreme expenses that are involved here. Helping them to understand what the cost is definitely makes them much more aware of ways in which they can help the hospital and themselves to get the better type of supplies and implants.
You know, I can so support that, John. We were working in Lubbock with a group, and it was very clear that one of the most important components of creating this physician-hospital alignment is information, and not only what the implant costs, but the physician owners also need to understand what the actual direct and indirect costs are involved in running that OR, because the implant cost is just one small part of it. So the communication and the transparency that a committee like this can provide is excellent. Next slide, please. Clinical alignment for physicians and patients. This basically boils down to just some of the 3 areas where we're able to align everyone clinically through the creation of a clinical operating committee that meets once a month. It's a decision-making group. It's a group that looks to create standards for provider participation. And it's also a group that can review various capital equipment or other type costs. It's been very effective. We find that in many cases, this committee becomes really one of the first times that some of these physicians are all in the same room communicating about a common project and goal. We also look to use clinical pathways, performance metrics, algorithms to create a standard of care, if you will, that is measurable, that we can generate outcomes to constantly improve internally through our quality assurance program, but also to share with payers and various groups in surrounding areas that we will need to look at this data. It's now become very important to have this kind of data for contract rates and meeting incentive initiatives by many of the third-party payers, including Medicare. Last but not least, we also set up a monthly team conference to be able to evaluate new cases or evaluate patients that have been through a treatment protocol and assess what might be the next step in the treatment plan. So these types of processes are all inherent in using the SpineMark, the spine model for alignment of all parties in the goal of the center. Rob, next slide, please. Mediating turf battles. John, I know between you and I, we could probably write a book on this. What would you like to talk about some of your experiences?
Certainly. There's turf battles all the time, obviously, when you're making decisions with regard to new programs that are coming on board, programs that you want to keep, programs that you want to eliminate. I think, you know, getting back to what I mentioned earlier, the importance of finding solutions that the doctors like that will keep them away from investigating any other opportunities, aligning themselves with the financial rewards out there, keeping in mind that physicians are not always driven by the direct financial rewards, but the efficiency also. I built a surgery center many years ago where, you know, the physicians were all a bunch of ophthalmologists who were working into long hours of the night because of all the whitelisted cases that were being done in the hospital. We built a surgery center for them. They didn't care about the profit coming from the surgery center. They just wanted to make sure that they were working during the day and that their surgical schedule was compacted so that they were all working in a line, so that all the procedures were done before 7 o'clock at night and started at 7 o'clock in the morning. They could care less about how much money they were making from the surgery center itself. What they were interested in is how much money they could make in their practice by doing more cases in a certain period of time. So taking that to this type of a scenario, helping to find ways that makes their practice more efficient, helping them to put more cases into a day. And then if there's other financial rewards that come out of it, you know, so much the better. And certainly understanding that, you know, physicians are in this for, you know, obviously more than financial rewards. They also want to see good clinical outcomes for their patients. They want the reputation that comes from doing a good job and knowing that they're the best in the industry. So providing opportunities within your own institution for that, you know, moving into a center of excellence type model like we talk about a lot here, and giving them authority over decision-making processes about the equipment that they're going to buy, the supplies that they're going to use, and not immediately going for the cheapest options that are out there. Often physicians can tell you, you know, given multiple options, they might go for the cheaper item out there, but if they want to go for a more expensive item, help them to give you information as to why that might be better for the patient or more efficient in the surgical schedule.
Thank you, John. I would add to this that what I've seen throughout the course of the number of years that I've been working in this field is that spine, it tends to be a very competitive field, as does some of the interventional pain and other surgical type specialties. And what, in many cases, especially if you have a very large number of physicians in a service line doing cases at a hospital, each one of them has a different approach. Each one of them has a different set of things that they need in terms of their cases. And a lot of times they're very competitive with one another. Time and time again, for the hospitals that have tried to, or physician groups who've tried to put these programs together, they haven't been able to successfully find a way to be in a collaborative environment. So we have chosen as a model of creating a joint venture type of management company to be able to, when we're not dealing specifically with a syndication of a facility, to be able to give everyone involved the opportunity to participate on a clinical level under the governance structure, on the management side, and of course there's an economic part of all of that, and then to constantly drive advances through care on the research side. By putting everyone in the room and for the first time having the ownership, if you will, the tangible ownership of entities as part of the structure seems to resolve a lot of the internal conflicts and turf battles we've seen, and at least points a way to starting the process of using communication and building, team building, as opposed to, separating ourselves by our territory. Rob?
Excellent. Thank you, Marcy, and certainly thank you, John, as well. It concludes the presentation portion of the program. I want to move into now the Q&A portion. We've got some time for Q&A, and I want to make sure both Marcy and John have a chance to share some final thoughts before we conclude. But as a reminder for our attendees, you can submit questions by typing them into your control panel in the space labeled Enter Question for Staff and clicking Send. If for some reason we don't get to your question, don't worry, your question will be shared with our presenters, and you can certainly email Marcy. Her email address is on this slide here, or reply to any of the emails you've received about today's event with follow-up questions, feedback, requests for topics to be covered in future webinars, etc. So let's jump right into our first question. First question, of the models you presented for alignment earlier in the presentation, so let me see if I can read this correctly. What do you usually use in setting up a spine center? The person asking is from a small rural hospital with very high volume spine service line. What do you think would work best in this setting? Again, small rural hospital, high volume spine service line. Marcy?
Yes, hi, Rob. Thank you. Ideally, the joint venture model, even in a rural hospital setting, works extremely well. You can also include other components like gain sharing, which has been trying to become more of a dominant player in the joint venture world. But in our experience, the creation of either a facility that everyone is going to have ownership in, such as an ASC or a specialty hospital, or if those are all, are not options, creation of a management company that is co-owned by the hospital, by the facility, and the physicians involved, and a third-party manager is really the ideal option for accomplishing, especially if you have a large service line, bringing all these disparate groups together in a congenial manner.
Thank you. Let's move into the next question. Again, Marcy, I think I'm going to direct this towards you if my memory serves correctly. You mentioned research as an alignment strategy. Can you discuss how that might fit in as a separate joint venture? What is the structure of such a program, and who are the participants?
That's a great question. Thank you, Rob. Basically, on the research side, it's possible through the creation of a joint venture entity, either with the hospital or with the physician and a third party, to become very involved in clinical research. So the structure is, and what we usually do is we'll take the majority ownership in the JV of a spine research organization, because we're going to manage it, operate it, and things like that. The hospital, if it wants to be involved, will then usually will want another large physician and to save the balance for the physicians, or in some cases the hospital has just opted out and let the physicians be the co-investors with SpineMark. So basically it's a completely separate organization. The physicians will elect managers to meet monthly, and review the various protocols and various studies they're involved with. It will have a staff of a clinical research coordinator. We usually operate them, and it's run as a freestanding, affiliated, separate organization.
Thank you, Marcy. Next question. This is interesting. What is your experience with CIO-type structures, legal entities that can unite physicians and hospitals that are truly clinically integrated, that pass FTC guidelines and are START compliant?
John, what are your thoughts?
I don't have an answer to that one. I mean, when we're developing programs, you know, obviously it's kind of important to bring experts into the process that understand all the different requirements, not only for, you know, on a national level, but also in the local area. It's tough, you know, because you have to have really more details as to what type of a scenario we're talking about here. But definitely bringing people into the process that are knowledgeable about the area, understanding the importance of developing an integration model that's not going to get you into trouble with all the authorities out there that that regulate the industry. Not sure what the rest of the question was.
Well, just it sounds like it might be helpful to take this question offline, so I certainly encourage the attendee to reply again to one of the emails you've received about the program, provide a little more detail on your question, and then John and or Marcy can follow up. Let's move into the next question. From someone from a physician-owned hospital in Houston, exploring options for becoming a spine center. How does your model fit in with a hospital that already vested owners with equity? Marcy, you want to start the discussion?
Yes, Rob. Basically, this model, the creation of a management company to support the spine center, is actually a really great option for this particular situation, because a lot of times the physician owners of a specialty hospital are always concerned about the dilution of their equity. And so in developing a spine center there, what we can actually accomplish for them is the ability to bring in new physicians that use the facility under equity with the management company until such time as maybe the hospital or the original physician owners want to allow to have more partnerships within the facility. So I like the flexibility of this market, of this concept, and I also like the idea of being able to open up the center to other physicians that are practicing in the community, maybe not on staff currently at a given location, and use this as a vehicle to drive, you know, quality assurance and high standards of care for outcomes, and have everyone vested in the center, independent of having to dilute the existing owners of the hospital. John, you have any thoughts?
No, I absolutely agree.
Excellent, thank you. Looking at the clock, let's do, I got time for one last question. I said I wanted to give Marcy and John a chance to share some final thoughts. And for those of you who submitted questions that we didn't get to, as I said earlier, make sure those questions are passed along to our presenters today. We'll do their best to follow up with you on those questions. Final question for today's webinar. This individual represents a university-based hospital with a large faculty of a large number of clinical faculty, as well as 12 full-time faculty members based in the Midwest. The person wants to know how they overcome the multitude of alignment issues they face, combining university with private practice clinicians and programs, including research.
Well,
Marcy, you want to get us started with that?
Yeah, I'll get us started. I want John to jump in. You know, again, this type of model of creating a spine center of excellence, multidisciplinary, is a perfect model for this type of environment, because you've got community physicians on the clinical faculty, and then you've got the university-based physicians as full-time faculty. And very often the needs of the physician in the community are very different from what they face in a university setting. Having said that, the management structure JV is, again, a great way to not only support the needs of all parties in aligning for the goals of the center and the management, but also to be able to expand the clinical faculty from the community and surrounding areas and their involvement. So basically what would be structure would be, the recruitment of a multidisciplinary team and the setup of a research organization, and then the creation of the research JV, which the clinical and full-time faculty could be part of, as well as the management JV for the administration and oversight of the center, creates an opportunity to take all the nuances of those various practices and make it a seamless integration through the development of a spine center for patient care, for physician services, allied health, in one integrated, comprehensive model. I think it's a home run. John?
Absolutely, and I think bringing outside people into the process here is key. Is a key part of helping the faculty also to understand things that occur outside of the faculty or outside of the educational environment and bring it into real life, and also gives opportunities for the faculty members and perhaps even students there to participate in situations which they might not see in the faculty, in the educational world. This type of a model really is probably really the only way that you can integrate these types of in and out groups of people.
I agree,
Excellent,
John.
thank you. We're now going to move into a final portion of the program where I ask John and Marcy to share some final thoughts. Before we get into that, I certainly want to, again, encourage today's attendees to submit additional questions. Just, again, reply to any of the emails you've received about the program, or you can certainly email Marcy directly with her email address on this final slide. John, will you share some final thoughts before we conclude?
Certainly, and I've tried to take the physician side of this discussion. The whole purpose here is to try to find ways in order to keep physicians engaged, keep them involved with your organization if you're a hospital, creating a collaborative environment, finding every avenue that you can find to keep them happy, to keep them within your organization, bringing them into the decision matrix, letting them help decide the type of equipment that you're going to purchase, the type of supplies you're going to use, the type of implants they're going to use, giving them information, becoming transparent with them as to what is available. Not being shy about asking them what their needs are. And then, if the hospital can't afford it, that's one thing. But understanding that physicians are going to come to you with an explanation or a reasoning for what they might want to purchase, and then doing cost-benefit analysis to look into it. In this type of a thing where there's shared decision-making, it makes things a lot easier. And again, as I talked about earlier, trying to avoid the complexities that often come with working with a hospital. And remember, doctors want efficiency. They want to find ways that the organization will provide services to them or to their patients in an efficient manner and help to improve or reduce the amount of time it takes them to do the procedures, the turnover time in between procedures, and increase the education the patients have so that when they come into the facility and after they leave, they're provided the best quality care.
Thank you, John. Some final thoughts from you, Marcy?
Well, I think that given all the trends for what we, and we really don't know what's going to happen with the implementation of accountable care. We know that it's been delayed a year for some of the employer initiatives. But this model really resonates with now and what's going on in the spine world. And I don't see a better time, given the complexities of what physicians are facing and hospitals are facing and in their service lines, to be able to really create a very successful program using some of the concepts we've talked about here to be able to become the market differentiator in your community, in your region, on a national and international basis. We're going to be talking about medical tourism in another webinar, but this whole phenomena is changing how we as consumers look at our healthcare options and how we go about finding solutions to those needs. And I think that it's key Alignment is key, and with alignment, in what we've seen in this kind of model and in this kind of type of environment, you can really expand your market barriers and your boundaries to successfully draw patients from a broad, wide range catchment area, and still keep the physician partners and providers involved in the process and satisfied with the outcome. I think that's one of the most important things, is to support the clinical objectives, the economic objectives, and make everyone part of the success of the venture.
Thank you, Marcy. And again, thank you, John. Thank both of you for tremendous presentation, answering a number of questions. I'll be forwarding along a few others to you. Again, I certainly want to thank the attendees for taking the time to join us today. As Marcy said, our next program will be focused on medical tourism, so stay tuned for that. You can look for emails announcing that program and how you can register within the next couple weeks. So again, thank you, Marcy, John. I'll thank all the attendees again for joining us, and this concludes today's program. I wish everyone a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.